What's up, everyone? Welcome to Here's the Thing, a show about current events, social issues, and their relevance in today's Black community. Today, I want to talk about something that has been making the rounds on social media platforms, and it's regarding the passing of the late, great Nikki Giovanni and the, I guess, surprise many people have at knowing that she had a white partner. Um, This conversation has always been perplexing to me. And it's been perplexing because I've yet to have anyone show me any tangible, real evidence as to the relevance of a person's racial partner and how that impacts their Black identity, their advocacy in the Black community. Um, I'll be honest here. I'm of the belief that people are allowed to, and for lack of a better term, don't have to explain who they're with, right? When it comes down to Black advocacy, I feel that anyone that chooses to take on the cause of Black empowerment, I don't know if I want to say Black liberation, but I'll just say Black empowerment, is commendable if their actions are authentic, consistent, things like that. So for me, to see people putting into question, I guess is a good way of putting it, um, Nikki Giovanni and her body of work. Um, it's I'm not gonna say it's disheartening, but yeah, that's the closest word I have to it. But let's just also say this. Um, there are countless examples of individuals who throughout history have engaged in interracial relationships, and those interracial relationships um, did not, in my opinion, overshadow their contributions to the Black community. Uh, Many people may or may not know that the late Dr. Martin Luther King was in love with a white woman before he married Coretta Scott King. In the autobiography of Malcolm X, um, Malcolm Little uh, was in, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a relationship, but he had a romantic encounter with a white woman um, who also engaged in some of the crimes that he committed before going to prison. Um, but again, those are just a couple of the examples. Of course, there's Frederick Douglass, who actually asked for permission from his wife, his Black wife, to then marry a white woman, right? And so there's all these different examples, but I always feel like this is a very sore spot in the Black community because we tend to not hash out the feelings of why. And again, I can't speak for any other Black person. I can't speak for anybody other than myself. But I think one of the reasons why this continues to be an issue of concern is the fact that as Black people, we are constantly reminded of our Blackness. We are constantly reminded that we are considered to be less than. And so there's just this collective belief that if someone is going to be speaking up for Black issues, then they should be Black all the way around, whatever that may mean. Um, but I feel like that's oftentimes a myopic viewpoint. And it is one of the lesser spoken about residual impacts of racism. Um, and I think that's something that we also don't talk enough about, and that is how centuries long racism, racial institutions, discrimination, bigotry, all those things have oftentimes fostered an internalized form of discrimination, bigotry, xenophobia, if you will. definitely homophobia, all those things. And because in many cases, I feel that we as Black people spend far more time than should be allocated to justifying our identity as Black people, we shut out the idea that being Black is just one facet of our identity. And I know there may be some people who are going to hear that and say, "No, I don't agree with that," and that's fine. But I need us to understand that as we seek to evolve in the 21st century, we also have to recognize where the chains of archaic thinking of our past hold us back from actually being able to move forward with liberation. There's been a couple of people, both online and offline, that have made some very, very valid points about Blackness or pro Black spaces, if you will. And they say that some of those are nothing more than replicated white spaces, basically, Black people trying to replace white supremacy with a Black variation of it. That they can be some of the most oppressive and discriminatory spaces, even though it's going under the guise of being pro Black. And I feel like that is something that may be contributing to this discourse now around the late Nikki Giovanni's choice in a partner. I also want people to think about this. Many of us see and saw the late elder through the lens of her public face, her public persona. Very few of us, if any at all, who are now having these critiques experienced Nikki Giovanni on a personal level, on an individual level. And I think that in the age of social media and the internet and parasocial relationships, we sometimes confuse these parasocial relationships with proximity to people we admire. Um, I have only been in rooms where Nikki Giovanni has been. I have never gotten an opportunity prior to her transition to speak to her personally. So I don't know whether or not she experienced something that made her feel that having a white partner in a same sex relationship was something she had to do. And honestly, it's not for me or anybody else for that matter to pass judgment of her choice in a partner. And I know that that can be a hard pill for many people to swallow, but it's the reality. The idea of love and romantic relationships and involvement takes on different forms for different people. And while it's easy to say, well, if you're pro Black, you should love Black and you should do all the things Black. And I, I don't agree with that. I don't. I struggle with saying that because earlier in my life, I would have been like, yeah, if you're pro Black, if you're for Black people, you should love Black. I can say that for myself as an individual, that my preference is to love and date a Black woman, a Black partner. But I don't think I have the breadth of experience or qualifications to tell anybody else that that's what they should do. I also think that we pretty much engage in a slippery slope when we attempt to tell or attempt to qualify people's Blackness and their love of Black people based on their choice in a partner, right? Because a person dates someone that is not Black, does that somehow diminish their Blackness? Does that diminish their contribution to the Black community? Does that diminish the actions that they have taken or will take towards, the improvement in the Black community? I don't think so. No more than I think that a person who may not like what is, traditionally known as Black cuisine is any less Black. It just means that we have to, as a community, learn how to embrace diversity within. I think that's what this all boils down to, is that while we have been pressing so hard to get the larger external American society to embrace and accept diversity as a part of the social, cultural, and political fabric, we have not taken enough time to examine internally whether we do the same. And by we, I mean Black people. So, um, that being said, from my perspective, whomever anyone chooses to love, right? While it may raise an eyebrow, I don't think that alone is something that would disqualify the validity of a body of work such as the late elder Giovanni put forth. Nor do I think it's a fair analysis that we, as Black people who exist now, in the shadow of the work and the conditions in which she existed, um, I don't think it's fair for us to try to qualify or question something that really is outside of the boundaries of our purview and expertise. So, thank you for tuning in. And I want to close with this. Sometimes it's best to learn how to look at people through the lens of reality and not just our perspective. And sometimes that is one of the biggest challenges that we as flawed individuals have, but it is essential for us to do in order to truly move towards the type of society in which we want to live in. So, hope folks have a good rest of your day, and thank you for tuning in.